Everything's fine.
This is hopeless. I say we cut our losses and walk back.
This whole trip is just a series of deader and deader ends.
Ever since that puberty alarm went off, nothing around here works the way it's supposed to.
I don't even recognize this place anymore. It's light out at 1 in the morning.
I have never been inside so many jars in my life.
And the Riley we knew is gone.
And if Joy can't see that, well, then she's delusional.
Delusional? Of course I'm delusional! Do you know how hard it is to stay positive all the time when all you folks do is complain, complain, complain? Jiminy mother loving toaster strudel! Do you think I have all the answers? Of course I don't! We can't even find the back of our own mind. Anxiety is right. Riley doesn't need us as much as she needs them. And that hurts. It really hurts.
For the social nine, sloth doesn't look like stillness. It looks like constant motion, meetings, projects, helping, organizing. They disconnect from themselves not by doing nothing, but by doing everything for everyone else. This comes from an early gap in love and recognition. As a child, they felt invisible at home, so they searched for belonging outside, with neighbors, friends, families, anywhere they could feel appreciated. They learned that their place in the world depended on being useful. The strategy became automatic. Join every group, sign up for every task, stay involved so you're not forgotten. And when they're not participating, guilt creeps in. If I'm not productive for the whole, I don't deserve to belong. Over time, personal needs are postponed indefinitely. They adopt the group's priorities as their own, often without noticing. The focus is always outward. What does the group need? How can I help? And the connection to themselves fades. Even when the chance comes to speak up or show their work, discomfort sets in. Taking up space feels wrong. Praise is wanted in secret, but deflected in public. They want to shine, but they fear being noticed and ignored at the same time. The result of this is a compulsive doing that works like a drug. Staying busy is the easiest way to avoid emotions, needs, and the discomfort of stillness. The more they work, the more they believe they've earned the right to belong. Many push themselves far beyond their limits, doing twice as much as anyone else just to feel equal. This overwork is powered by a strong constitution and a mindset that says, I can manage on my own. Asking for help feels unnatural. The cost is burnout, collapse, or illness that finally forces them to stop. They also carry heavy loads for others, financial, emotional, practical, without setting limits. And while they're aware of their longing to belong, they often don't see how automatic their participation has become. For them, participation and belonging feel identical. The engine of their life becomes doing and being for others. It gives them purpose, but also keeps them disconnected from themselves. Until they can pause long enough to feel their own needs, the cycle will keep running, and they'll keep mistaking endless activity for genuine connection. Growing up, they felt like they didn't quite belong in their own family. They weren't taken into account, weren't accepted for who they were. And that absence leaves a very clear message. If I want a place here, I have to earn it. From there, the strategy becomes second nature. Please everyone, no matter the cost. Smile when you don't feel like it. Agree when something bothers you. Find something positive in people so you can excuse what hurts. Keep the peace, because conflict might mean losing whatever little connection you have. Underneath it all is a constant trade-off. If I'm useful, I get to belong. That means staying available, ready to help, always taking on more. It means listening when you're drained, saying yes when you want to say no, and taking on work you hate just to stay inside the circle. And that's where the trap lies. It doesn't come from a genuine generosity, but a means to survive. It's an attempt to fill an emptiness by getting approval and validation from the outside. Their radar is always scanning. What does this person need? How can I make them comfortable? And in this process, their own needs disappear. It works until it doesn't, because when you're living off other people's comfort, you're running on secondhand well-being. You're left tired, disconnected, frustrated, and you might not even know why. What makes it tricky is that the social 9 doesn't expect much in return. They're proud of being self-sufficient, even if that pride hides the belief that they're not worthy of being cared for. Asking feels risky. It's better to go without than to be told no. And this is why they often can't tell what they like, what they want, or even what they need. They've learned to swallow discomfort before they even notice it's there. They overgive in relationships, thinking that if they give enough, the other person will love them back in the same way. And when that doesn't happen, resentment builds, quietly and powerfully. Sometimes the pleasing takes the form of staying in the background. Other times, if the group wants them in the spotlight, they'll step up, lead, organize, host, but immediately downplay it. Recognition is a contradiction for them. They crave it and they fear it. Compliments are deflected and the topic is changed. But being ignored cuts just as deep. It's an endless loop of wanting acknowledgement, but never letting it in. Feeling unseen, but keeping parts of themselves hidden to make sure no one is uncomfortable. And deep down, there's this unspoken pact. I'll please you, so you'll love me. I'll give you everything, so you'll make a place for me in your life. And this has a cost. They lose themselves in this process. And the truth is, no one's going to give you the connection you're missing if you're not even connected to yourself. For the social 9, self-forgetfulness is a survival strategy. They learn early on that it's safer to go with the flow, avoid introspection, and sidestep conflict. The internal belief is, if they don't look too closely at their own pain, maybe they won't have to feel it. Underneath, their inner world can be rich and alive, but it's locked away. Somewhere along the line, they decided it was better to stop looking inward than to face the belief that they weren't lovable. Without that loving gaze in childhood, they concluded what's inside me isn't worth seeing. That belief, I'm less, I'm not worthy, I'm annoying, drives them to put other people's needs first, living off second-hand satisfaction. This is why over-adaptation runs so deep. If they conform to what others want, they can avoid abandonment. They learn to swallow discomfort, telling themselves, mine doesn't matter, you have to put up with it. It's no big deal. And with others, it's the same. Don't worry, whatever you want. There's also a refusal to find out too much. If they don't notice mistreatment or conflict, they can play it down, avoid a fight, and keep their place. Beneath it all is the core belief, I don't belong unless I earn it. So they work harder, help more, try to be useful enough to deserve a seat at the table. At the same time, they're terrified of being alone. Even toxic relationships feel safer than withdrawal. That fear pairs with a manage alone mindset, never asking for what they need. And to seal the deal, they put on a happy face. If everyone's happy, they're less likely to be rejected. The taboo runs deep. It's not just against being selfish, it's against standing out as well. Better to be agreeable than risk being left out again. Even when they take the lead, there's shame about showing their work, and fear of being caught trying to prove themselves. The strategy becomes ironic because it makes them just as disruptive as it does accommodating. Overhelping, stepping on toes, missing cues from others, all because they're not actually listening inward. And when confronted, they fall back on, well, I was just trying to help. Behind all of this is a deep belief, I'm not lovable. So they try to be lovable by force, pleasing, smoothing things over, avoiding problems, all while staying numb to the love that comes in. For some social 9s, the lessons become brutally clear in childhood. Parents telling them to smile through an accident, acting happy over a gift that was really a hand-me-down, swallowing guilt, pain, and even abuse to protect the family. Learning that if they cause problems, they risk losing connection. These early moments cement the crazy idea: if they don't like me, they won't see me. If I make life pleasant, they'll want me. If I cause trouble, they'll leave. And so they adapt, they please, and they disappear into the role that keeps them safe, but also keeps them from themselves. One, social and friendly. Social nines make friends easily, but there's always an undercurrent of uncertainty about truly belonging. They feel safest with children and animals, where authenticity comes naturally. Social events, parties, travel, dancing, these are all reliable ways to feed their need to belong. 2, they make good hosts and guests. They enjoy hosting, and they're also attentive guests, quick to help and bring thoughtful contributions. 3, talkative with humor. When they feel included, they're warm, talkative, and humorous. Humor and stories can build connection, but also act as a defense to cool contact or deflect discomfort. 4, hyperavailability. They keep themselves constantly busy and available. This overextension can lead to burnout, depression, or illness when their body forces them to stop. 5, prone to addiction. Alcohol and drugs might start as a social aid, but they can become a means of numbing. Sports and activity can be outlets, and with this, their habits and weight can fluctuate with moods. 6, workaholic tendencies. They tend to take on more than their share, identifying strongly with responsibility. The underlying belief is they'll accept me for what I do for them, and they focus on being useful and efficient, but avoid confrontation and struggle with boundaries. 7, impulsive. They may act first and think later, avoiding introspection by jumping into action. 8, collaborative leadership. They're willing to lead if the group or authority figure wants them to, but they prefer collaborative, consensus-based leadership. 9, opposition to abuse of power. They're loyal to authority figures they respect, but they're outspoken against hypocrisy or injustice, even if it runs the risk of exclusion. 10, curiosity over feelings. They have a strong interest in knowing about the world, but this can replace feeling their own inner experience, knowing about life instead of living it. 11, forgetfulness and overextension. Most of the time they overcommit, forget tasks, and sometimes withdraw without explanation, and this can act as a passive way to avoid conflict. 12, idealistic. They're drawn to social causes, volunteer work, or activism. They can merge with the values of a group without questioning them, sometimes fighting other people's battles, or drifting into abstract, cosmic ideals that keep their focus outward. 13, lack of personal authority. They often believe they have no right to assert their own will. Saying no feels almost impossible. 14, naive. They might remain in unhealthy situations out of a desire for inclusion, while also struggling to form deep trust or intimacy. For many social nines, the hardest truth to face is that they don't actually know they're disconnected from their emotions. They've lived so far from their own inner world that it often takes something deeply painful to break through the armor. It's a thick skin that protects against pain, but also blocks all other feelings. They avoid looking inward because they're afraid of what they might find. That self-protection limits their emotional life so much that feelings arrive muted or delayed, if they register at all. They put on a good face to bad weather, oversimplifying their internal world, and avoid questions that might stir discomfort. Therapy can be difficult because it demands exactly what they've learned to avoid, sitting in their own experience. Social nines can endure pain, exhaustion, or discomfort without noticing it, emotionally playing dead like a possum. The problem is, they forget to wake up when the danger passes. This disconnection serves their over-adaptation. Instead of living their own emotions, they merge with the feelings of others. They might feel someone else's grief or outrage as if it's their own, but recount their own hardships with complete detachment. Extroversion often masks the absence of self-contact. They can be sociable, friendly, and funny, but humor, automatic laughter, or a sudden change of subject keep both themselves and others away from anything deeper. Underneath, there's a habit of thinking about feelings instead of feeling them. They tell stories, explain situations, or share details, sometimes at length, but never actually touch the raw emotion. Curiosity can become another substitute. They may have a wide range of interests and knowledge, but it stays in the head, disconnected from their own lived experience. This mental focus feeds the daze that keeps them from fully registering what's happening. If you ask them how they feel, the default answer might be, "I don't know." Even when they notice something painful, they can quickly play it down, ignore the pieces that don't fit, or turn it into something simpler and safer. Action is another escape. In moments of personal pain, they throw themselves into tasks, becoming efficient and productive to distract from the hurt. And when it comes to negative emotions like sadness, anger, or fear, the default is repression. Anger may break through when long-standing efforts to please go unreciprocated, leading to outbursts that feel disproportionate even to them, followed by guilt or self-reproach. Sadness can be a disguise for anger, and fear may hide under the thought, "I don't feel like it," or "I don't know," or "I can't." Fantasy offers yet another exit. Imagining idealized worlds, cosmic explanations, or revenge scenarios that they never carry out. These daydreams create distance from reality, from responsibility, and from the concrete actions needed to care for themselves. Beneath all this haze, social nines do have intuitive depth, but it's often clouded by their disconnection. When they begin to reconnect emotionally, that intuition can become an anchor, helping them stay present in their own experience instead of living on the edge of everyone else's. What stands out most about the social nine's childhood is simple but defining. These were children who did not feel seen, and many had to grow up before they were ready. A common pattern is arriving at a bad time. Some were born when their mother was already overwhelmed, when the family was in a crisis, or in marriages where no love was left. In many cases, the father was absent, physically, emotionally, or both, leaving the mother consumed by her own struggles. The message absorbed early on was clear: "I'm in the way. There's no space for me here." Some social nines learned to become invisible to avoid causing problems. Others tried to exist as quietly as possible, suppressing anything that might trigger disapproval. For many, the most painful part of childhood was buried or reframed in false positivity. Painful memories got erased. Events were painted over with a good childhood narrative because it felt safer to believe nothing was missing. They could say their parents never hit them, that there was no conflict, but there was also no affection. No one noticed if they were gone. No hugs, no emotional talk, only surface level peace. And even in peaceful homes, most had to take on adult roles too soon. They became helpers, caregivers, peacemakers, trying to stabilize the family without making waves. Some babysat or worked jobs while still in early adolescence. Others were assigned the role of entertainer, expected to sing, dance, or be the good one to keep the harmony. Fathers were often absent in another way. They were either severe and emotionally distant, or deflecting pain with humor, or only showing recognition when the child met them intellectually. When home offered no attention, many social nines looked for it outside, at school, with friends, or through activities where they could contribute. Group settings became a refuge. Some were praised for their good humor and generosity, but even then, they often kept intimacy at a distance out of fear of rejection. Loneliness ran underneath it all. Even with friends, many felt anonymous, misunderstood, or on the edge of the group. Some fantasized about being adopted by a more loving family, or created imaginary friends to fill the gap. Kindness and cheerfulness made them easy targets for teasing. Their tendency to drift off or seem naive earned them labels like fool or clueless. Some swallowed the hurt and distracted themselves. Others decided in adolescence that they'd stop playing the stupid one and become sharp, clever, untouchable. Looking back, what's consistent is that these children were largely unaware of just how little mothering they received. That lack of early emotional nourishment is the root of the disconnection they live with as adults. And because they channeled their energy into adapting, meeting demands, blending in, staying safe, they grew up with the subtle but constant sense of precariousness about belonging anywhere. The most damaging thing for the social nine is the very thing they can't see: how absent they are from themselves. They don't realize it because the awareness they need to notice that absence is buried under constant outward focus. They adopt the emotions, opinions, and priorities of others until they can't tell where they end and the other begins. They confuse relentless work, endless social obligations, and helping everyone else with actually living their own life. Instead of listening inward, they live entirely outward. Self-forgetfulness is their shadow. The constant drive to be useful is a defense against facing what's inside. It's easier to disappear into group activities or other people's needs than to confront the emptiness left by not being loved enough in childhood. They often hide a deep belief that they're worthless. Behind the helpful, happy face, their own potential stays locked away. They give their resources to others, defend causes that aren't their own, and repress any emotion or desire that might disrupt their image as pleasant and easy to be around. It's a survival tactic. If they're likable and never a burden, maybe they won't be abandoned. The real wound is not loving themselves. A lifetime of self-neglect grows into futility, but they mask it by working even harder to be useful. Their inner voice says things like, "Why look at me? There's nothing here." Or, "Better to settle." These thoughts cover something harsher: self-disgust. Even their lack of pleasure in life can be a form of self-punishment. This lack of self-love bleeds into their relationships. It leads to poor giving and shallow intimacy, sometimes calcifying into quiet contempt for life itself. They may cling to the values of whoever they admire, confusing that with tolerance, and they end up supporting the status quo simply because they won't take their own stand. In the shadow, their helpfulness has an agenda: to keep people dependent so they won't leave. They want a central place in the group, and they get it through efficiency and reliability. Even if they act humble about it, maintaining the good, selfless image also hides a territorial side, a desire to claim space they were never given as children. This can show up physically in the way they occupy space with their body or their constant presence. They're censored against openly expressing feelings or opinions, so frustrations build, rage is repressed, surfacing only in compulsive overwork, numbing through food or pain tolerance, or in obsessive caretaking that leaves no room for others to say no. When the walls finally crack, the anger comes out in disproportionate bursts, so intense they shut down any possibility of dialogue. The result is a pattern of invisibility, withdrawal, and occasional unpredictable explosions. The social nine becomes both the caretaker and the ghost, always there for others, but never truly there for themselves. Claudio Naranjo comprised a framework of 3 loves. The social nine developed a gape love more than any other type, which is comprised of compassionate, selfless care. They also have more access than any other nine to admiring love. Confluence makes them naturally able to put themselves in someone else's position. They come across as empathetic, maternal, and generous, pouring themselves into caring for others. But this comes from a pattern learned in childhood, giving care instead of receiving it. What began as a survival strategy becomes an adult role, always tending to friends, family, co-workers. The problem is that they love others far more than they love themselves. They believe their care is genuine, but it's often mechanical, rooted in the idea of love and not the living experience of it. Their kindness runs on autopilot, excluding themselves entirely. The more they disappear, the more they function as the selfless provider for everyone else, never realizing that real compassion sometimes means setting limits, stating needs, or risking disagreement. They initiate relationships built on this caretaking, then they find themselves trapped in them, offering help that may be unneeded, disproportionate, or even unwanted. Quote, "When I walked into the store, I was always looking for something to give to someone. I realize now that the face people made didn't always match the reaction I imagined." The next love style is Eros, which is comprised of joyous, erotic love. This is their least developed. Early in life, instinct and spontaneity were repressed, even in situations full of pleasure, dancing, conversation, time with a partner. They're often mentally checked out, focused on duty. Joy feels selfish, and selfishness feels wrong, so even pleasure becomes a task. In relationships, erotic energy is redirected into pleasing the partner rather than mutual enjoyment. Boundaries are easily crossed. Early inability to say no in sexual situations often led to a loss of self-respect, a wound that can last years. Quote, "The love that interferes is mother love. My gaze is always set outside of me. I have always considered myself very loving, but I realize now it's been a poor emotion because it never occurred to me that I could love myself." Moving on to respectful love, which for the social nine might seem balanced, but is also distorted. Others are seen as bigger, better, more deserving. Often it's pseudo-respect, a form of admiration, fueled by low self-worth and timid values. For those who grew up unseen or face maternal contempt, this creates a muted relationship with the divine. Big questions fade, practicalities take over. The transcendent feels like something reserved for other people. Quote, "When I was 5 years old, and I found out people were dying, I cried with helplessness. I felt cheated and angry with God." In the economy of love, they try to build affection with service. What they hope for in return is recognition. They will love me for what I do for them. But there's a trap. They want to be seen, but feel internally forbidden from standing out. Quote, I give, but what the hell? I don't give my love, I give my service. The emotion stays outside. When joyous love is underdeveloped and compassionate love is automated, admiring love becomes projection. They admire what they don't believe they can become. Without seeing the divine in themselves, they can't fully recognize it in others. Quote, "In my relationships with the man, I lack the confidence that love will be reciprocated unless he imposes conditions. I'm afraid of being taken over." Spiritually, self-love is the missing piece. Without it, they can't reconcile with the mystery. The first step is learning to extend that love inward, becoming their own ally instead of just everyone else's. When it comes to therapy, social nines often arrive without realizing just how disconnected they are from themselves. At first, the biggest benefit is simply committing to an hour focused entirely on their own life. Even more powerful is having someone in front of them who truly pays attention, someone who sees and hears them. This begins to repair the absence of nurturing they experienced growing up, and communicates that what happens to them matters. In those early sessions, the social nine's focus is rarely on self-discovery. Instead, they unconsciously work to avoid rejection from the therapist. They can be agreeable and accommodating, yet underneath, there's a deep mistrust. If they sense disapproval, or if something is explained vaguely, they might feel humiliated or shut down emotionally without saying so. Therapy can fall apart quickly if they perceive even subtly that the therapist doesn't genuinely care. A large part of the healing process is receiving the parental care they never had. Social nines often struggle to believe anyone could be concerned about the harm they do to themselves. That's why verbal clarity, Honesty, and sometimes even appropriate physical presence are crucial. These moments start to build a bridge between the social nine and their own feelings. One of the key tasks is recovering the ability to listen inward. For some, this is the first time in their lives they've ever tried. They need to notice how much of their attention is pointed outwards and begin turning it inwards. Then, learn to express what they find. This means breaking long-held taboos about anger, sadness, and pain. Therapy often starts when their old strategies for repressing these feelings stops working, and when pleasing others leaves them frustrated or empty. It's vital that they experience their emotions without being rejected for them. Another major step is confronting self-sacrifice and postponing their own well-being. Being taken seriously by the therapist helps them start taking themselves seriously. This is how they develop a sense of worth strong enough to take charge in their lives and separate their identity from others. For many social nines, the defense of staying busy masks a deep disconnection. They may be active in the world, but internally, it's as if they've never truly stepped into life. They need to see that thinking about an emotion is not the same as feeling it, and that imagining love or joy is not a substitute for living it. Self-deprecation, self-abuse, and an underdeveloped capacity for pleasure all need to be named and addressed. The inner child work here is essential, attending to themselves with genuine love and respect, not just the idea of love. This requires valuing truth over comfort and discovering the real, felt experience of being. I've included some therapeutic tools that work well. Dream work is a good entry point when disconnection is strong. Inner listening exercises, asking repeatedly, what do I feel? What do I want? What do I need? Expressing negative emotions without the fear of rejection. Noticing avoidance patterns, such as using humor or excessive activity to escape pain. Eye contact exercises. Learning to stay present without losing the connection to self. Breath-based awareness to separate their own experience from the environment. Stopping unnecessary activity and resting in being rather than doing. Exploring pleasure through dance, movement, music, and activities with no goal except enjoyment. Voice work to reclaim their right to speak and be heard, even practicing no in multiple tones and shouting their own name. Stillness, nature, and affirmations to reinforce self-worth. I am valuable. I love myself. The ultimate aim is for the social nine to bridge the gap between thinking and feeling, to stop living in ideas about love or joy, and to inhabit the direct living experience of themselves without losing it in the presence of others.